Well, hello there. Welcome back to the show. This is the Bucket Ponds Podcast, Season 1, Episode 7. My name is Terry, and I'll be your host today. Here at the Bucket Ponds YouTube channel, we like to do a monthly podcast where we discuss various elements of the hobby. And when I say the hobby, I'm talking about various nano ponds, small ponds, outdoors and indoors. We like to replicate pond-like ecosystems, both in various containers outside and in jars, bottles, buckets, and things indoors. This works out to be a lot of fun for me. We raise a lot of microfauna like ostracods, detritus worms, etc. And we also raise quite a few different fish species, but we don't get too crazy with the fish because they can depending on which fish you have. They can be quite a bit of maintenance and they can be somewhat expensive. So we like to keep things very low cost here. We like to have a lot of fun without spending a lot of money. And this kind of works out to be a fun challenge. But today we're going to talk a little bit about the pool ponds. Yeah, like a swimming pool turned into a pond, and not quite like you think. You might be imagining an in-ground pool that's been converted into like a beautiful koi pond. And don't get me wrong, I love those projects. I watch those videos all day. But here at Bucket Ponds, I have stumbled into a fun type of project, and I've been building one every year. And I build a what we call a pool pond. I build them outdoors. We use the hard plastic kids play pond. Excuse me. These ideas are so intertwined in my mind. But we use the rigid, hard plastic outdoor kids play pools as fish ponds and frog ponds. It works very well. So I don't use the inflatable pools or any of the collapsible ones because they can be somewhat vulnerable to weather and damage, leaks, and things like that. So we use the rigid, hard plastic pools, and typically you can find these at like Walmart, dollar stores and places like that, especially around springtime, summertime, when kids are being outside, playing, having fun. You can use the collapsible above ground pools to make some very nice projects as well, which I might get into that in the future. But so far here at Bucket Ponds, we have built two of our beautiful pool ponds, and I enjoy them a lot. We got quite a few views on some of those videos as well, especially the first one, giving you a basic guide on how to set up one of these projects. But I've built one every year, and there are some challenges with these. Namely, you cannot buy them online. It's very hard to order them. They're very large, they are hard plastic, and a lot of companies just are not going to ship these, on Amazon or anywhere like that. So you do have to go find them in person at different types of big box stores or discount stores, places like that. So that's one challenge. You can't just freely order them online, but you can find them. And you can always turn other projects into ponds, very similar. Anything that can hold water and won't be immediately toxic to the animals inside will usually work. I've experimented with using old refrigerators, old freezers, like a big chest style freezer that you open up. But really, our best projects have been the pool ponds. So every year for the past, 3 years or so, we have built a new pool pond. And in these projects, we raise mosquito fish. We also grow quite a few plants, and we have some bladder snails out there, possibly some ram's horn as well. And we're always finding different interesting microfauna, different small insects, crustaceans, different little creatures, little creatures. And they tend to come to you, and that's the fun part, is when nature comes to your project and you find new things that you did not expect to see. That's where I have a lot of fun. And in our last checkup on pool pond number one, we noticed that the water was actually very, very clean. The ammonia levels were slightly high, but there was absolutely no nitrates, no nitrites. Uh, and the water is very clear. The pH was right around 7. And ultimately, this would have been a pretty nice aquarium, you know. The ammonia levels were slightly high. Uh, I can't remember off the top of my head, like 0.50 ppm, something like that. Uh, but that's not exactly unexpected. You see, leaves and debris will fall into your pool pond, and they'll begin to break down. And if you have any fish inside or frogs, especially frogs, they are going to produce waste, and they are going to cause some ammonia to appear. But your plants and your bacteria will act as a strong filter. They will break down this ammonia into nitrogen, and the plants will consume this nitrogen and use it to grow. That's my basic understanding of the process. So, yeah, pool pond number one was actually pretty clear, pretty clean, and that's not surprising because, it's a natural environment. I don't run any chemicals out there in the pool ponds. You don't have to have a pump or a filter or any kind of equipment. The real limitation is your imagination and the availability of plants in your area. Now, if you're just going to build your first pool pond, you can, go order some stuff online. I'm sure you can find all kinds of amazing plants out there. But in my opinion, it's much better to acquire plants in your local environment. You may be surprised at what will actually grow in an aquatic situation. There are quite a few different types of spiderwort, different types of grass, and other plants, especially common weeds, I say with quotation marks. But a lot of weeds and pest species, pest plants, will actually grow quite well in water. And, that's kind of the mentality that I've developed over the years. Um, you can you can find a plant and you'll research it a little bit, and people will say, "Oh, this is horrible. Don't ever plant this in your garden. It'll take over." And it might even be native in your area. And I've seen quite a few of those, like rattlesnake weed and some other plants. And I started to think, okay, so it wants to grow. It's easy to grow. It's aggressive, so you won't run out of it. It won't disappear. It's not going to be fragile. It's going to be very durable because it's, a wild plant species. And I started to think, like, why work against this? Why would I fight this? Here's the easy mode plant that I've been looking for. And I think that's what you should keep an eye out for as well. Now, if you happen to live somewhere like Florida, oh my God, you can find all sorts of amazing aquatic, semi aquatic plants pretty easily. If you live somewhere in a very arid environment or somewhere further up north, you may struggle. You may have some difficulties, but it's not impossible. Especially in a colder type of environment, you should look for plants in that area because they will have adaptations to survive the winter. Either they'll fall back, they'll overwinter as seeds and regrow next year, or they'll just reemerge from the ground. There's all sorts of different adaptations. But doing so, using plants that you have locally available, they are already adapted to the weather conditions in your area. They are more hardy and easier to work with in my experience. So I highly suggest that. Definitely look for some plants that you have around you. If you have the ability to visit a pond in your area, that is a prime location to discover some interesting plants. And I want to preface this by saying, guys, if you live anywhere with any kinds of predators, alligators, crocodiles, anything like that, do not go out there and mess with them. As a natural born Floridian, I have seen people do dumb things. I've heard all kinds of stories. You'll be out there fishing at night and you'll hear drunks like daring each other, "Hey man, go out there and tap that thing on the nose and I'll give you $50." Or, or you'll even encounter poachers, people who illegally kill crocodiles and alligators. And I've never actually seen a crocodile out in the wild, of course, but I've seen lots of alligators. And, it's heartbreaking when you find a headless, tailless corpse floating around in a canal. It's very sad. And you just want to send these people to prison, you know. But we got to keep it lighthearted. But yeah, if you live anywhere with any kinds of predators, water moccasins, aquatic snakes, like be very careful. Do not collect from any of those locations. I don't want anybody to get hurt. So if you're going to do a collection trip, you're going to visit a local pond, be very careful. Do not go alone. Avoid snakes, large reptiles. Just be careful. Always wash your hands after dealing with pond samples. Just be very mindful, be very observant, and I should just say, don't do this at home. uh, but I don't want to ruin your fun, so just be careful. But definitely investigate plants that grow in your area. You can possibly identify plants that are native to your state and then order them online. That's usually a possibility as well. Now, moving on from there, fish and frogs in your pool ponds. Of course, I run some natively, really. My fish are available and native in my area. They are eastern mosquito fish, and I love them to death. They are meant to be in my state, so they will never become invasive. If they escape, if there's a flood or something, they'll be fine. They'll just return to the wild where they are meant to be. Depending on which state you live in, you should be aware that it's actually illegal to capture a lot of wild species and raise them as pets, which is very counterintuitive. Here, on one hand, you'll have the state government saying, like, oh, you cannot have this king snake, for example, this type of king snake that is available in your state because it's native and, you shouldn't go out there and catch native species and take them out of the environment. Like, that makes sense, of course. But they'll also say, oh, we had to spend $2 million to fight this invasive snake species that pet keepers are bringing into the area. The pet trade is the problem, blah, blah, blah. Well, you've caused this issue. You've both caused the issue and promoted the sale of exotic species. I think a more accurate way, a more um, feasible method of modifying this invasive versus native thing is for state governments to encourage you. The state could give a few breeders a license to sell these special types of Georgia king snake, and then you could buy from these licensed breeders and you could have them as pets. And if it gets out, oh well, it's meant to be here. It'll be fine. And the state could do this. This would also discourage people from owning like large Burmese pythons, which can be a problem, especially down in the Everglades. But yeah, be aware that it can be illegal to catch a lot of species and keep them as pets. So there are other options, though. You can look around for various types of minnows. Minnows are really fun, and you can even go to places like PetSmart. You can go in there and say, "Hey, I need some feeder fish," quotations, and generally they will sell you some feeder fish that are meant to feed like other pets. But these feeder fish, typically they will only sell you males because they don't want you to breed them at home and have your own source of feeder fish. But that's fine. If you live in an environment, research the species in question, Smoky Mountain minnows or whatever, learn about them, check out their environmental tolerances and whatnot, what temperatures they can have and things like that. But yeah, if you find that a species will work for your local environment, go up to PetSmart. Don't tell them what you're going to do. Just tell them you're buying these as feeder fish. They will sell them to you. It's fine. They're very cheap. You could also go to like a bait shop and typically get some very interesting minnows. And again, they're only going to sell you males because they don't want you to breed them. So you'll have to, buy males every year or something like that. But it's feasible. The main purpose of having these fish in your pool pond is to act as a control mechanism for insects, especially mosquitoes. So our mosquito fish, they are amazing. They completely destroy any mosquitoes that try to breed in the ponds. And they also do a pretty good amount of damage to planaria, all sorts of microfauna that try to get, really well established and take over beetle larvae, things that want to breed in water. The mosquito fish will eat them, which I love. I love seeing that. It's very interesting. But, it has the added benefit of, preventing mosquitoes from emerging from your pond. You don't want to annoy your neighbors by being the guy that breeds mosquitoes. But a few insects will still survive among your plants and things, so you are ultimately benefiting your ecosystem. Humans have this tendency to chop everything down and turn everything into a flat, grassy backyard. And of course, that is very important. It looks nice, and as you modify the backyard environment, you of course discourage things like snakes and mice and things from living around your house, which is very important. As humans, we don't necessarily want to be around snakes and things like that. But also, we're destroying what the world was, if that makes sense. You know, like here where I live, my house. this was all swampland. This was like almost like a marshy environment built from flooding river. And of course, that river has been controlled, modified, redirected. The marsh has been destroyed, um, turned into farmland. And of course, as humans, again, we like food. We have to have farms, of course. But yeah, this has really affected this local environment, and it's changed things quite a bit. We talk all about, oh, my own native species, oh, save the earth and whatnot. And I don't mean to make fun of those people, but at the same time, they're living in a massive apartment building, that's just destroying whatever life actually lived there. And even vegetarians, like that farmer's out there, killing and poisoning all sorts of animals so you can have your vegetables. So, no system's perfect. But when you build a little pool pond in your backyard, you actually create a little dent in the grassy backyard environment, and you'll start to notice that wildlife will come to you, especially frogs. Odds are good that you have a few frog species that live around your house. Some tree frogs, some little toads or something. But as you set up your pool pond and you allow it to run for a year, maybe two, you'll start to notice, like, oh, hey, look, there's a frog. They'll just come to you. You don't have to go buy a frog and put him in there. They will seek out these locations. And that's really rewarding to me. That's a lot of fun, in my opinion. Like when nature comes to you, eventually birds will start to visit. And along with birds, they'll bring different, interesting little bits of life with them. You may even just one day wake up and there's a little duckweed in your pool pond. And, that's because it's stuck to some bird's leg and he flew to your pond to take a bath, and there you go. Or, you might have ostracods or different things appear in your pond over time naturally. A good example for us are the snail leeches. I didn't go out there and catch any of these leeches. I would have been both mortified and very interested if we did so. But they just appeared in some of the ponds one day. We took some samples and like, oh, hey, wow, we have leeches. Oh my God. And I was so excited. I was also really scared, of course, because, movies give you a bad example. But that's a good way to look at things. Life will come to you. And those leeches most likely stuck onto a small bird or a frog or something that visited one pond and then, made its way into our backyard and brought it along with it, brought that life form with it into the pond. And I think that's really cool. Um, I run something called the Bucket Ponds Creature Collection. And in this collection, it's a bunch of microfauna, different small animals, and snails and worms and things that we have acquired from various pond samples. And our creature collection is always expanding, as we find new things that are coming to us. And that's really cool. For me, it runs kind of like a series of events. Like, oh, well, I'll catch something. I'll say, oh, wow, I'll figure out what it is. This is a planarian. And I'll read about it, and people are like, planaria are horrible. They'll kill everything. They'll kill your shrimp, which they probably will. Blah, blah, blah. So, of course, immediately I'm scared to death. But then after a while of studying this animal and trying to raise it and get it to reproduce, we learn a lot about them. We see that they're not as scary as we thought they were. And then, we learn ways to control them as well. So, like planaria, again, as an example, we caught some. Oh my God. They eventually showed up in some of our fish tanks. Oh no. Way too many planaria, hundreds of them all over the place, eating all of our bladder snail eggs. We love our bladder snails here at Bucket Ponds. So that was a big problem. I'm constantly breeding massive armies of bladder snails. So there's thousands of eggs available. And so anything that can eat them can become quickly invasive in my aquarium. But we found a way to beat them. It turns out our mosquito fish will happily eat planaria. So we went through a series of fear, interest, understanding, and control. And I think that's very important. So don't get scared if something shows up. I've been talking about the leeches a lot lately. I wish you guys would watch those videos. I'm so in love with them. Um, but they are snail leeches. I don't think they could bite a human if they wanted to. Yeah. But this is my hobby. This is what I enjoy. But if you're out there setting up your first pool pond, listening to this podcast, enjoy yourself, have fun. Don't be limited by what others say that you can or cannot do. A lot of people online are flat out wrong. I'm wrong sometimes. We're all wrong. We're all human. And, you might read an article that says, oh, this plant requires very well draining soil and blah, blah, blah. And if you do some tests on your independent test on your own, you might notice that, oh, well, this plant will grow emerged in water just fine. And that's always fun when you can prove those articles wrong. But especially nowadays in our modern age, a lot of these articles are actually written by AI, which is cool. It's really cool that we're approaching this point in the future. But these simple AI chatbot type services, they're basically just regurgitating info that was found online beforehand, which could be false in and of itself. And we're going to end up in a situation where all these different articles and information that we read is produced by AI that's just ripping off content developed by earlier AI and so on and so forth. So don't rely 100% on what you read online. Do some independent testing. I was reading about Ohio spiderwort, and it has to be grown in well draining soil, blah blah blah, and don't get it too wet, et cetera, et cetera. And I can look right over there, and I have some spiderwort growing out of a bucket of water right now, happily. Well, all right, guys. I do have to end the podcast sooner or later. I can't make it too long, otherwise we will struggle trying to get it uploaded to the internet. I just want to give a big shout out to our Patreon supporters: Clay Wise, Swan C, Jeff Kiesner, Ashley Danielle, Jay, Jess, Kev Wheeler, Wheelbite, and I think I got everybody. I hope so. I hope I didn't forget anyone. Also, I'm going to start our YouTube member shout outs in the next video. We'll be building another pool pond. Yeah, so I wanted to preempt that a bit with this video, this podcast episode. It seems like most of our Patreon supporters and our channel members are the people who listen to our podcast as well. So thank you guys. This is mostly for you, really, but I don't want to restrict it from the normal audience. I'm trying to keep everybody included. I don't want to make any channel member only videos. We could, I might one day do a little behind the scenes type stuff, but I don't want to exclude the normal audience. I want Bucket Ponds to be a big happy family. And, I want everybody to feel appreciated. So thank you so much. We're very close to our goal of getting about 10 people on Patreon so I can start giving away a few t-shirts as a random drawing. Just a very simple black t-shirt, says Bucket Ponds, has the link to the channel. We might make up some new designs in the future. I would love to open up submissions if you'd like to send me a t-shirt design that you'd like to see made one day. That'd be cool, but I don't want to steal anybody's artwork and profit off of it. I want to do that. In the future of the podcast, I have some goals. I want to do a couple interviews with some other channels. Psycho Plant Lady, I want to get on here and discuss the pool ponds with you a bit if you're listening. Recently, we got a comment from Father Fish on the YouTube channel. That was amazing. I didn't expect to ever see such a big channel out in the wild. So big shout out to Father Fish. Shout outs to Brian Boscow, again, Clay Wise, and really everybody that's listening. Thank you so much, our buddy Damon. I love all you guys. I hope you're having a great day. I'll be back next week with a build video or an update. Haven't decided yet. Probably be a pool pond update or a pool pond build video if it's ready. So anyway, guys, have a great day. I'll see you soon. This is Bucket Ponds. This is our Bucket Ponds podcast. And I'm just on top of the world, man. The channel's growing, and I thank you. Thank you so much.